Welcome to this lesson. In this lesson, we'll be looking at parameters versus arguments and functions. Remember that we've been talking about functions in a couple of the previous videos, and we've explained what a function is, how to define a function, how a function can be invoked or called, and how a function can be used as an expression when we talked about arrow functions in JavaScript. Now, for this particular lesson, we are going to touch an aspect of what a function does when it is defined in JavaScript. I want to bring us back to the fact that a function declaration, you can see something like this. Just a second. I want to change this to parameters versus arguments, because that's the topic that we are working on. And the subject is I have here is what I want to put. In JavaScript, function parameters are arguments are distinct concepts. So I'll just put as differences between parameters and arguments. Yes. In JavaScript functions. So I love that. So now remember that in the previous example, if you try to declare a function and you give it a name, say my education as a function name with this brackets, then you remember that there are times where we pass something like this in, and then we'll just proceed and then make something like this. And when you want to call these functions, just like my education, which is the name of your function, and then you pass in like two parameters that is expected in the function declaration, and then you can go ahead to now say, okay, I want to output the result of this. Now, what is inside this bracket here is what is called parameters in JavaScript. And what is inside here, when you invoke that function or call, is what is called arguments in JavaScript. So this is the difference between these two. When you hear JavaScript passing parameters to a function, passing parameters to a function, or calling a function arguments, sometimes you might be confused as to what the two means in JavaScript. And with this simple demonstration and analogy, I hope that by now you already understand what it means to have parameters in your function or in your function declaration and arguments in your function call. So this is parameters that are passed into the function, and these are arguments passed when invoking the function or calling the function. Let's continue. So with what I have here, in JavaScript, function parameters and arguments are distinct concepts. Parameters are the name listed in the function definition in that bracket that I showed earlier. And arguments are the value received by the function. So one is usually listed while the other one is usually received, especially when you are invoking or calling the function that you declare. Now look at an example here. Function keyword. This is the name of the function. Then the parameters here are the names and age. And then you can see this return hello. So this parameter here, the name, and then the age of what I will be calling when I invoke the function. So what I'm basically saying is, if I write this function out now, let me quickly do it then so that you understand what I'm talking about clearly. So if I have function greet, and I pass in name and age, and then do return. I want to use template string since I will bring it out since I will be returning a variable. My name is name, and I am age years old. Now I hope you can see this clearly now. Now, if I move out of this and try to call this function out, so let me do something like the greet, then I'll pass my name. The first one is Toby, and then I'll pass my age. I'll say 20. Now, notice that here when I'm passing my name, I am, putting a quote around it because what I'm passing in is a string, so it needs a quote. So let me just quickly assign this to a variable and say let results yes equals this. So now I want to output what my result is in my browser document.write results. Now I hope you can see this. My name is Toby and I'm 20 years old. So now by passing these two arguments here, Toby and 20 as the it's going to substitute for the parameters that I have inside my function, which is here. So I hope that this better explains the concept of parameters and arguments to you when working with functions in JavaScript. So let's continue. Now, function used as variables. Functions can be used as variables, just as I demonstrated now by assigning the function to a variable result and then call out that result to get me the value of my function in all types of formulas, assignment, and calculation. So you can always use function as variables in all types of formula, assignment, and calculation. Instead of using a variable to store the return value of a function, so what that simply means is that sometimes you can just use function as variable as well. Instead of using a variable to store the return value of a function, let's just look at an example that you can see here on my screen. Now, let's take a look at the example. Let me quickly demo it so that you understand. So I'm just going to take this. Okay, let x equals to Celsius. So I'm doing this. I'm declaring a value here as my variable, as you can see. And then I move down and say let text equals. Then here I want to pass my function here to a variable. The temperature is for space x, which is my variable, and then another space in Celsius. And then inside after this variable, then I can just make that function and say functions to Celsius, which is my function name. Then I pass in a parameter of this. And then here I can now put my code block that I want to execute. So I can just set a code expression for what I want to return from my function. Return 5 divided by 9 variance. Okay, this is a suggestion. And then I can then decide to say, okay, now that I have my function, let me try and get out the value of my function. And then I can pass text here. Now, I hope you can see this, the temperature, which is what I have here. So this is what is meant by the fact that functions can be used as variable. You can see that here is the function, and then from here to here is being assigned to this variable, which means that sometimes you can use functions as variable, and that's the interpretation of what this means. Now, you can use the function directly as a variable, and if you take a look at this example as well, it is obvious that you can use this part directly as a variable. By assigning it to a variable, I just use the variable name to get the output of such value for the function that we declare. So to do a quick recap, parameters are, the parameters are what you list in the bracket when working with string with functions in JavaScript. Parameters are names listed in function definition, while argument are value received by function. So we pass one as a list when defining function, and the other one is received when you are calling or invoking that function. Thank you. I'll see you in the next video.